Hello and welcome to Not Your Type, a channel all about me and T1D. Thank you so much for joining me on my next video. I'm so excited to be talking about diabetes technology today. I'm going to be ranking different technologies on a tier list on the next screen with letter rankings of A, B, C, and so on, and giving a little bit of my experience and opinions on most of these because I've used most of them. So let's get started. We are going to start with blood sugar monitors, and this one is kind of an old school one, and that is a glucometer. The glucometer that I have is the OneTouch Vario Reflect. I got it for free from a prescription from my doctor, but you can also get it for about $30 to $50 at a local pharmacy. You can also get cheaper options. They have General brands or other OneTouch brands that are slightly older and don't have as many of the features that mine has, but you can get it for much cheaper for about $10 to $20. Mine looks like this, the OneTouch Vario Reflect. It has different buttons so you can track your blood sugars, go to the results log, see some patterns that are trending high or low, or if you're in the good range and when those typically happen. And the way you use it is you put in a single test strip, wait for it to load, and then you prick your finger with this guy and you see what your result is. All glucometers generally work the same. Mine is a little more high-tech because it's newer and has more features like tracking your blood sugar and seeing the patterns that it has. But in general, you can still check your blood sugar with them, which is something you need to do 4 to 5 times a day at least as a type 1 diabetic. So I'm going to give glucometers a ranking of a B because they generally work really well. You need them in order to survive as a diabetic, but there are some better options out there that do track your blood sugar more regularly, which I will get into next. Another aspect of glucometers is that you have to buy test strips. So they come in this little bottle. You can get 10, 15, 25, 50, 100, various amounts depending on the prescription you have or if you are buying them up front. In order to check your blood sugar, you need test strips, so you have to continuously buy them because you cannot reuse them. And this is where it gets really expensive if you don't have a prescription or insurance that will cover this because you are paying out of pocket for these at a pharmacy, grocery store, wherever you may get them. The kind that I get can retail for about $32 for just 25 sticks. So that really adds up because those 25 go by so fast, especially if you're checking as many times a day as you need to, which is about 4 to 5. With some glucometers, it's even more. You might have to spend $75 to $100 on 50 sticks, which is a crazy amount of money to pay out of pocket and really adds up as you buy more and more because every day is different. So you might not test as much one day, but might have to test a lot one day because your blood sugar just will not stay up or will not stay down. So for test strips, I'm going to give this a ranking of a C just because they work, they do the job, they're average, but they can be really expensive. And even though the glucometers themselves are not expensive, these test strips really hike the price up for a living for a diabetic who can't afford other methods. Next up, we have something called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM for short. This is something that I wear on a regular basis because it's much better at continuously tracking your blood sugar levels, and it also sends messages straight to your phone so you can see a graph of your readings, see how you're doing throughout the day, fix any issues that you might have, and it also alerts you when you are having a rapidly declining blood sugar, a low or a high blood sugar. In the past, I've used Dexcom, the G6. It's the newest Dexcom. They're working on the G7 right now. It is a sensor that is attached to your skin that you can wear for up to 10 days. It sends messages to your phone via Bluetooth, and you can also share it with your doctor so they get readings on your blood sugar and can fix any prescriptions or unit dosage that they might need to do. I had a wonderful experience with the Dexcom at first, and then I had some issues with the application. It was hurting more. The sensor was a little too big for my taste. It was really bulky. Even though it's come a long way and it's a lot thinner than it used to be, it just wasn't a great fit for me. So the Dexcom itself, I will give a B because it did the job until it didn't for me. And I know other people have incredible experiences with it. It just wasn't the system for me. That's okay. Now, the one I use now is the Libre Freestyle 2, which is a circular sensor I wear on my arm. And it does the same thing the Dexcom does, sending readings to my phone, letting me track it continuously. It works so well. I really love using it. To me, it's a little more discreet. I like wearing it on my arm. I don't care if people really see it. I had trouble wearing sensors on my stomach, so the arm works really well for me. This is the packaging it comes with. You get a sensor and a applicator with it every time. It's usually by prescription, otherwise these get very expensive. For the Freestyle that I use, it's about $125 per sensor. For the Dexcom, it's about $400 for 3 sensors, each lasting 10 days, and $400 for a transmitter, which lasts multiple months, but it's still very expensive up front. And if your insurance doesn't cover it, it can be really detrimental to the access you have to this. My Libre Freestyle, I'm giving an A because I currently have no issues with it. I really like how I wear it. I'm really enjoying it, and if I have any issues, it might drop down to a B, but overall continuous glucose monitors are an A in my book. They are phenomenal, especially for little kids or newly diagnosed diabetics who are still figuring out what a high and a low blood sugar feel like. And even for me, who's a little more experienced, it gives me peace of mind because I know what my blood sugar is doing throughout the day, and I no longer have to have that element of guessing. Speaking of tracking our blood sugars, we're going to talk about what to use with low blood sugars. So once you identify a low blood sugar, you need to get some sort of carbs, usually about 15 grams of carbohydrates in your system as soon as possible so that your blood sugar can rise and you are not in trouble of ultimately death. In cases of severe low blood sugars where the person is unconscious, you'd use an injection called glucagon, which is something many type 1 diabetics need to keep by their side in case this happens. It is an injection like insulin that does the opposite. So instead of lowering your blood sugar, it raises it for you so you can get out of that unconscious state and get more help as provided. I've been fortunate to never have to use glucagon, but I'm going to give this a ranking of an A because it works so well from the experiences I've heard, and I keep it with me all the time just in case. The people around me know how to use it, and I'm really grateful to have something just in case something terrible happens. For the more moderate low blood sugars where we are still conscious and able to eat something, that's when we have something like glucose tabs, sugary candy or snacks, juice, anything that will raise our blood sugar and is around the 15 carbohydrate mark. I personally despise glucose tabs. They kind of are like Tums. They're really chalky. I just hate the consistency. The flavor is okay, I guess, but it's not my cup of tea. So I'm gonna give that a C because it's definitely not the ideal and would be the last thing I go towards if I were looking for something to raise my blood sugar. Juice, on the other hand, is my go-to, especially apple juice. It does the job. It's easy to drink. You just keep some juice boxes in your car, in your house, in your purse, wherever you're going, your bag. It's helpful. You just take it out, sip it, and then you're good to go. You wait a couple of minutes and you're feeling better. So juice, I'm giving an A because that's my go-to and it always saves the day. Now, on the other end of the spectrum is high blood sugars. Now for this, the way to identify high blood sugars is obviously to check it, but you also need to go a step further. If it is above about 250, you should check for ketones. Now you do this with ketone strips. They're relatively cheap. You get them for about $13 to $15 at pharmacy, grocery store, etc. And you urinate on it and it will show a color after a couple of minutes, and it will tell you whether or not you have ketones and how severe they are. The goal is to not have ketones. That can lead to DKA, and that is very unhealthy for a type 1 diabetic. It's very dangerous to be in that state, so we don't want to have ketones, and that's why we need to make sure our blood sugars do not get super high or stay in that state all the time. Ketone strips are pretty straightforward. They're relatively cheap. You can just keep them in your house until they expire. You don't need to buy them monthly necessarily, and just use them when needed. So these I'll give an A because they do the job, they're very accurate, and they help us identify ketones when we need to. After identifying a blood sugar or if there are ketones present, we then would take insulin, which always works well, but there are other methods like exercise. This works well too, but ideally we would just take insulin to lower our blood sugar and continually monitor it and check it to make sure it's going down, where it's headed, if it's plateauing, just ensuring that our blood sugar is going back down to a healthy rate and not staying up there in the sky high range. Aside from ketone strips, the way to treat a high blood sugar is to take insulin based on how many units you should do for a correction that your doctor gives you. Everyone's is a little different. You need to continually monitor it to make sure it is going down, it's still not rising. It's best to not eat anything that has carbs so you're not making it spike back up again. And overall, just really checking to make sure it goes down so no further problems occur. Now, there are a multitude of technologies available to give yourself this insulin for when you're eating or if you are having a high blood sugar. And one of the traditional ways is a syringe and vial. When I was in the hospital, I was trained how to use a syringe and how to get insulin in it effectively, because sometimes you can get air bubbles, things can go wrong. So it's a little difficult to use, especially if you are a little kid or just a parent who has no background in diabetes or health in general. But you can learn how to use them, and they're not very expensive. They're about $20 for a pack of 10 to 20, and you throw them away after 1 or 2 uses, and then you're good to go. The vials you're drawing from with those syringes, though, however, are much more expensive. For about 100 units of insulin in a vial is about $300 on average. That gets to be very expensive every month when you're paying out of pocket, maybe even multiple times a month. But there are some generic brands that have just been approved of insulin that go for about $82, and those work just as fine, but it still is expensive to pay over time, and that's why we're continuously working on insulin affordability and making sure people have access to insulin, because it's something we need on a day-to-day basis. A syringe and vial of insulin I will give probably a C. Again, it does the job, but it was really time consuming for me to get it to work right. I kept getting air bubbles, I'd get frustrated, and it just wasn't very fun for me, and it does get expensive when you're constantly having to buy all of those things. So a C is where I will put a syringe and vial. If you're like me and you don't like to use the syringe and vial method of giving yourself insulin, there's another thing that I use called an insulin pen. It looks like this. You take off the cap, and you have insulin in this cartridge. Mine are disposable Novolog vials that I get in a pack of about 5 every month. Again, my insurance covers it, but it can also get to be expensive, about the same amount as a vial of insulin, but these are much easier to use. All you have to do is dial up the amount of units you're going to take, put on a pen cap, which is a small needle that you twist onto the top, and push the button and it gives you that insulin. So I'm going to give an insulin pen a grade of a B because I think it works really well for me. I'm really comfortable using it. It does the job better than a syringe in my opinion. But, however, I know there are better ways to get consistent insulin. One of the more recent technologies that's very exciting about type 1 diabetes is insulin pump therapy. An insulin pump continuously gives you insulin throughout the day, so it's more rationed out, more spread out, and stabilizes blood sugars for a longer period of time. There are 2 main types of insulin pumps, the kind that has tubes connected to you to give insulin that way, or a patch that you can wear similar to a continuous glucose monitor called an Omnipod. The tube system works really well. My grandma has one and she loves it. It works really well for her, so she doesn't have to think about giving herself shots of insulin, or people who might be afraid of needles and don't want to use it on a continual basis. I don't have any sort of pump, so this isn't something I can speak on personally, but for people who have it, it works really well. And the tube system, I would give a grade of a B based on the things I've heard, because there is less freedom with the tubing. It could get caught on things. It can easily get clogged, I've heard, but people seem to really like this. The Omnipod is one I've been considering, especially having a continuous glucose monitor, because it's a pump you can wear on your arm, on your stomach, wherever feels comfortable, and it continuously gives you insulin without the tubes. So it gives a little bit more freedom, and I'm really excited to try this one day. So I'm going to give an Omnipod an A, but again, I have no experience with either of these. These are just the things I've heard and seen and the things that I want to try. The downside with insulin pumps, however, is that they can be very expensive. The Medtronic system that has the tubing can be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, which can be spread out over a few months, but that's still a lot of money to be paying if your insurance doesn't cover it or even doesn't fully cover it. The Omnipod is about $800 for what they call the Personal Diabetes Manager, and is about $30 per pod that you get, and you can wear those for I think 7 to 10 days. Our last technology we are going to talk about is the newest innovation with insulin therapy, which is the artificial pancreas. No, this is not implanting a new pancreas into your body or getting a robotic pancreas, but it is a combination of a continuous glucose monitor and an insulin pump. We call this a closed loop system because they are connected to each other. The CGM sends its readings to the insulin pump, and if you are needing insulin, the insulin pump will then give you insulin based on those readings. So it's working like an external pancreas since ours don't work. This seems so cool. It was just approved a few years ago, and I'm so excited to one day use one of these as we get some more innovations, have more things working together, and have it be more accessible. Currently, I have found that these are very expensive, about $8,000, which is a lot of money on top of other diabetes costs we're already facing. If your insurance does cover it, I recommend everyone go get it. I think this sounds so interesting. I'm intrigued by it. And ultimately, if we can make this more accessible, I think everyone should get this for their diabetes management because it's the best innovation we have had in a very long time. I'm going to give an artificial pancreas an A because it's working for your body exactly how our pancreas should be working, and it's the closest step we have right now to a cure, which makes me so excited to see what's to come. That is all the diabetes technology I'm going to be covering today. Thank you so much for following along. Please share your opinions below if you have any experience on the things that I don't have experience with, like insulin pumps or the artificial pancreas. I'd love to learn more so I can consider those options. But overall, I'm very excited to see where we go from here so I can hopefully review more technologies in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.